Hello everyone, Joseph the Broseph here. Nintendo just recently announced via a tweet that their next system, the successor to the Nintendo Switch, will be revealed here by the end of March of 2025, by the end of their fiscal year. And this is huge news. Now Furukawa also announced that next month in June there will be a Nintendo Direct. And just from this one tweet, there is a lot for me to unpack, a lot of speculation, and we're going to talk a little bit about today. In particular, I want to hone in on what it means for the Nintendo Switch successor to be announced by the end of the fiscal year of 2025 for Nintendo. Now, this is obviously great news for every Nintendo fan, unless you're just diehard set on the Switch just being Nintendo's platform to the end of time, which I know some of you exist. Now, the announcement of a Switch successor is huge news no matter who you are, because it is literally Nintendo telling us that yes, they have a plan and they are going to be showing us what it is really soon. Now, how soon could that really possibly be? They say by the end of March of 2025, which is a long time from now. That's almost a whole year. And there's a couple of different paths that they could take in revealing the next console. Now, what it exactly is, we still don't obviously know until Nintendo just flat out reveals it. They specifically have called it the Switch successor. Now, this, in some people's minds, could mean that it is a Switch 2, a Super Switch, whatever you want to call it, a direct sequel to the Switch, which would make a lot of sense, given that the Nintendo Switch is by far a very popular machine, and having a Switch 2 with like backwards compatibility would make a ton of sense for Nintendo. They can rely on the back catalog while also building up the new catalog for this new system. On top of that, they wouldn't have to alienate the entire audience that they've built up and instead say, hey, look at the new system. It's bigger, it's brighter, it's shinier. Why not just buy it and keep playing all the games that you love? And hey, they'll upscale even maybe. All that makes a ton of sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are actually going to get a Switch 2. Now, I personally believe that yes, we're more than likely going to get just an upgraded version of the Switch with all sorts of interesting new things, probably the spec bump that we're all expecting and other things. I'm going to leave that aside though, because Switch successor just in my mind means that the next console, at the very least, is going to build on what Nintendo has already established. It doesn't mean that Nintendo can't throw in some new gimmick. It doesn't mean that they're going to get rid of everything they already have in the current Switch either. Now, whatever it winds up being, Nintendo still has a couple of paths forward of when they will announce and show this thing off. Now, Furukawa in that tweet also said that it is definitely not getting shown off in the Nintendo Direct in June, which is fine. However, that does, in my mind, mean that we're not getting it for holiday 2025, because if you don't announce it in June, your next logical step from my perspective is that they would announce it in September, and that's a little too close to the holiday season. That would be announcing and releasing a console in effectively 2 months, more or less. It would be September, October, and then releasing it in November. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. That's too short of a period of time for anybody that wants to release a new video game system. And I say this based on the fact of even the Nintendo Switch itself had a relatively truncated time of announcement to release. They announced it back in September or October of the year prior, and then released the thing in March of the next year. That's about a 6-month turnaround, which is relatively short in the grand scheme of things. but it actually fit pretty well for the Switch because Nintendo needed something really, really fast to get out the door to recoup all their problems from the Wii U and the 3DS. So having that 6 month turnaround wasn't too bad. It worked out really, really well. And Nintendo could choose to go that way with the Switch successor console. They could choose to announce it with some kind of teaser video like they did the original Switch in September or October and release the thing in March and give us the rest of the specs and everything in like January. That would be something that would feasibly happen. However, there is one little thing that's bothering me about that time frame. And that one little thing that's bothering me is that Furukawa specifically said that the Nintendo Switch successor would be revealed by the end of March of 2025. Now, that might not seem like that big of a statement, considering that there's all these months in between now and then that they can announce and reveal the next console. But Nintendo, they like to do things quite a bit different than the rest of the game industry. One of their mottos is that you just keep polishing something. You take something and you eventually can make something really great out of it if you just keep polishing it and you don't release it until it is ready. A lot of their products are built and designed around that philosophy. Now, the Nintendo Switch was rushed out of the gate, admittedly, especially the Joy-Cons, there was some build issues, but that is a completely different circumstance from where we are right now. Nintendo has technically all the time in the world to get another console out. And they want to make sure they do it right. So they could theoretically push off that announcement into March of next year, and we may not get a launch of the console until 2025, September of 2025 at the earliest. It could wind up being a launch console in the holiday season of 2025. We have no way of knowing for sure. Do I personally think that they're going to stretch out the release of the next console into the holiday season of 2025? No. Their software lineup is struggling as is, and part of that, I believe, is because they're holding games off for the next console. Looking at what we've got this year, it's been a lot of remakes, and I don't expect that to change. But I'll get into that into a prediction video for a June Nintendo Direct, which I'll be making here soon. So to wrap this all up, do I think that we're going to get a holiday 2024 release of the next Nintendo console? No way. There is absolutely no way in my mind that we're going to do it. The only way that they could possibly do that is if they announce it in July, which I just don't expect. I expect they're going to be squeaking by on whatever thin amount of video games they have currently slated for the Switch through the end of the year, especially with the fact we already know that the next Pokemon game is for the Switch and it is releasing in early 2025. I think they've got enough games probably planned for the rest of the year to keep us tided over. Now, do I personally expect that the next console will follow the same trajectory as the original Switch on release time and the whole 9 yards of when it's announced to when it's released? That's a good question. I personally think it is very possible because, again, early 2025 for the next Pokemon game, which is currently the only game in 2025 that we have a somewhat definite release date. It's stated that it's early 2025, which could be January, just like the previous Pokemon Legends game, which would work perfectly fine for a Switch 2 launch in March. How possible is it then that Nintendo just waits until March next year to finally reveal this thing to us? I think it's possible. That would put it in a really weird schedule for release, but Nintendo doesn't do much conventionally when it comes to their business model. And a September release of a brand new console is not necessarily a bad thing. Personally, I think that if we don't see an announcement reveal of some sort by September, we're not getting it until March of next year. But let me know, what do you think? Drop a comment down in the comment section down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on future videos. But as always, don't forget to take a break from life and nerd out, and I hope to see you next time.